Okay, so welcome to Workplace Investigation Complainant Interviewing Basic Overview. As I said, this is the third and final one in this series. For those who don't know me, that's my background there. I'm a qualified lawyer, but I don't practice anymore. I focus fully on my workplace investigation and training business. I'm a former member of New South Wales Police and got a couple of degrees, yada, yada, yada. So after you've analysed the complaint and you've planned your interview, obviously the next step is for you to interview the complainant. Okay, it's vitally important that you confirm the details of the complaint and you obtain as much information as possible to clarify the points that you have highlighted in your complaint analysis and your interview plan. Okay. So you've done your complaint analysis, you've decided all the things that you need to know, you've drafted your interview plan like I showed you last week, you've highlighted and you've marked up, and now obviously it's the time to get some answers from the person. I'm doing a complainant interview this afternoon and I've got an 8-page complaint with numerous markups, and so I'll be going through that with that person to get a lot of details. He's provided information, but he's provided very little in the way of detail. You know, comments such as, I felt extremely humiliated, but I need to know what exactly it was that made the person feel humiliated and that sort of stuff. So that's, you know, obviously that's the purpose of a complainant interview. Same process followed for witness interview, same process basically followed for the respondent interview. So without the detailed complainant interview evidence, without the detailed interview and a proper interview, you can miss evidence. Much of the rest of your investigation follows from your complaint interview. So drafting allegations against your respondent is going to follow from the complainant interview, conducting interviews and evidence analysis at the end of the day, and report writing is going to all be dependent on the information that you get from this interview. It's probably the most important interview, obviously, because it's where the complaint starts and it's where you're going to continue on from. So pre-planning. Now, I did send out a letter last week to people, and if you haven't done the previous 2 webinars, you can access them, and the link was on the invite to this thing. And if you send me an email and say, hey, can you send me the materials, I'll send you the complaints and all that sort of stuff. So if you haven't already got those sort of things. So basically you're going to invite the complainant to attend the interview. You're going to provide them with more details about, you know, what the interview is about. Obviously, you know, the interview is about the complaint that they have lodged, so they should be pretty well up on that. And I always say it should be done in writing. It can be emailed to them. It doesn't need to be a letter, with time allowed for the complainant to have a little bit of a think about it. So generally, if I, for example, if I want to interview a complainant on Wednesday, I'll probably written to them on Monday. I've had complainants, you know, I've written to them on Monday, and one guy recently, he got the letter probably about 9 o'clock, and he rang me about 10, say, hey, can we do this afternoon? Yeah, not a problem. I didn't have a problem doing that. So, you know, be flexible. It's important to advise the complainant that they can bring a support person, and I'll talk about support people a little bit later on. You don't have to have a support person. The only time a support person becomes crucial is for the respondent interview, where the Fair Work Act says that only an unreasonable refusal of a support person could be make the dismissal if there's a dismissal following harsh. So it's important. As a matter of course, I offer a support person to everyone. Complainants, witnesses, everybody gets offered a support person. Okay, timing. You might be flexible with timing of the interview. I've interviewed people at 2 a.m. With a complainant on night shift and witnesses on night shift, because they all said, oh, well, I'm on night shift, I don't want to come in on day shift. So I said, okay, that's fine. I will go and meet you at 2 a.m. in the morning, and did interviews then. So yeah, it's important to work around them with it's much easier if you can be flexible rather than demanding of your complainant or your witnesses especially. Other considerations: location. Is the office suitable? Will the complainant feel comfortable coming into the office? That's an important sort of thing to consider. If not, source another venue. Shared office spaces like Synergy, often they'll rent spaces. Local libraries. With COVID, it's a little bit difficult. I did an interview a few weeks ago. A guy wanted to do face-to-face, and I found that all local libraries had closed their rooms for hire. So I just got some shared office space. It wasn't that dear. I think it cost me about $35 an hour. Some local libraries are free, some charge you, and I've used local libraries all over the state, Dubbo, Mossman. So that can be an option. What I suggest is not an option, especially if you're going to be recording, is public areas and cafes and coffee shops. The amount of time someone has asked me, oh, can we meet in a coffee shop or a cafe? And my answer is no. Too noisy, it's not private, and it's absolutely not suitable to be conducting interviews. If I was just meeting someone for a discussion, perhaps, but not for a formal interview. Interview room setup, I'm going to jump to another. So ensure that you have enough space for all the attendees. The room affords privacy and can't be overheard. The room is quiet and away from external noise. Enough space for your materials, and adapt to suit if need be. So I'm going to show you now an interview room setup. Okay, so the interview room. Two types of setup. This is what I call an informal setup, where I've got the interviewer here, which is me, the interviewee there, and the support person there. And my recorder will be placed where the arrow is, where the cursor is. So in this situation, we've got a conversation going between these two people. The support person, to an extent, is cut out of the conversation. So if they want to get involved or interrupt, they've got to kind of crane their neck around and sort of come into this area there. So the interview is set up there. What I do is I set up the interview room like this before I start, and when the interview comes in, I direct them into the chair. So have a seat here, please. Sometimes I'll sit there and I'll say, I'll get you to sit here if you don't mind, because we'll be recording and it's better there. So it provides an informal, conversational style of interview room setup. Opposed to that is what we call the formal setup, which is this setup here. Interviewer on one side of the table, interviewee and support person on that side of the table. Again, the table then tends to become a barrier to communications. I'd be putting my recorder probably there, and look, sometimes you can't help it. Sometimes I've been having to interview in a particular, like an office situation. But even in an office situation, I'll often drag the chair around and put it into that sort of area there. Round tables, same sort of thing. If the table's round, I'll sit there, have the interviewee there. Boardrooms, I've been in boardrooms where there's been space for 30 people, and I'll just be up one end of the boardroom and in this setup here. So I find that to be, I guess, it's more approachable. It makes it, like I said, a conversation. I set up, before I might set up water glasses here and here and here. And sometimes I might move the support person's chair up a little bit. I will, if this was a longer situation where there's 2 or 3 chairs, I'd probably get rid of the chairs. So I'd only have the chairs available for those ones. So when the person comes in, they see these 3 chairs and I direct them into this one. I've got my materials across here, and obviously I'm there, okay? Like I said, sometimes you can't help it, but if you can, try and avoid this setup. As I say, it's a formal setup, and you want to try and make this some more a conversation than a formal interrogation, so to speak. Okay, getting back to our PowerPoint. So yeah, but adapt if required. You may have to make changes to the situation. All right, the interview, stage 1 is rapport building. Now, I suggest you keep it simple. Introduce yourself. So at the start of my interview, I'll introduce myself. I'll provide them my card, and I will say, here's my card, so you've got my contact details. I I've been asked to conduct an inquiry, an investigation, or whatever you want to call it, into complaints you've raised about Graham Brown. Explain the process. So what we're going to do is, my process is that I conduct a number of interviews and then I provide the organisation with a report. What I do is I record the interview and I show them the iPhone. I record the interview on the iPhone. And what I do is I will send you a copy of the transcript, and you don't need to do anything with a copy of the transcript. But if you feel we've missed something, or you think of something else, by all means, just send me an email. You've got my email address, and I'll add that into my information. So what happens is I'll be interviewing you. I'll be interviewing some other people, some witnesses, and if there's names you want to raise with me, please do. And then at some point I'll interview Graham Brown, and then I'll provide a report to the organisation. Explain their rights. Now, I always do this. I mentioned at the start, look, this is your interview. You can tell me as much or as little as you want. And then sort of, leave that open to them. Explain that the investigation is confidential, that their transcript won't be shown to other people, but will go with the final report to the organisation. But they won't get to see anyone else's transcript, and no one will actually know, no one else, witnesses, will know what you've said. And finally, do you have any questions? And sometimes I'll get questions and sometimes I won't. Simple as that. So, and if they've got questions, I mean, I can't tell you what the questions could be. I get all sorts of questions. Just let them have a chance to ask their questions. Now, I always say remain professional, neutral, not overly friendly or not aloof. I do review investigation transcripts, and I do review investigations where clients have been unhappy with the investigations, or have been briefed by the opposing law firm to review the investigation. And I do see a lot of times where on the record, and this rapport building stage is done without the tape going. So I've done a lot of reviews where even on the recording, people have been overly friendly or asking me questions. As I say, I like to just remain neutral. My preamble, which we'll go into in a second, is quite a formal sort of preamble. And I talked about this last week, but I'll show it again today. Here we go. So, and this is when the recording goes on, and I'll talk a little bit about recording later. So this is an interview between Phil O'Brien of AWPTI, Australian Workplace Training Investigations. This is Sydney Arbor being the complainant. That's the introduction. Also present as a support person. So Sydney's got a support person. And during the preamble, during the rapport building phase, if there's a support person, I'll say to the support person, John, do you understand your role as a support person? And John will go, yeah, I know what I've got to do. If John says, no, not really, I'll explain to him what the role of support person is, and I'll cover that a little bit later. So the interview has been conducted as part of an investigation for the company. It's been held, so we've got time and date, we've got the location, and the time commenced. I get them to, for the purpose of the transcript, please state and spell your name, just in case it's an unusual name, and Sydney Arbor, could be O-U-R, could be S-Y, so spell your name. What's your position at the company? How long have you held that position? Who do you report to? Now, as I mentioned last week, this preamble is a little bit like my warm-up. I'm sort of getting into the flow of asking questions. Now, this next part's important. I told you I'm conducting an investigation, so we're telling them why we're here, making it very clear on the record. Making it very clear on the record that at the conclusion of the investigation, a report will be prepared. Very clear on the record that the interview will be recorded and you'll be provided with a copy of the transcript. Do you understand that? Now, this is the third opportunity the person has to refuse recording. The first one is when they receive the letter, because the letter says to ensure accurate note-taking or accurate record, the interview will be recorded. So they've got that. And I've had people come back and say, I'm not real sure about this. This is the second opportunity was during the rapport building phase, when I say, look, what I do is I record, and if they don't say anything, we move on. And this is the third stage. Now, I don't need permission to record, but I do need to notify the person that they are being recorded. That's New South Wales. If you're in some other state, or in, as Tom's case, in Canada, check your local legislation. And you can do that quite easily by just typing, can I record a conversation into Google? and you'll get your local information. What you say may be incorporated into the investigation report. So letting them know that what they say may be incorporated into the investigation report which you forward to the company. What you say in the interview may assist me in making findings and recommendations in that report, and the statements you make may also be used if the matter proceeds to disciplinary action. So letting them know that these statements may be used later on. Are you happy to continue under those conditions? Yes, is the 99.99% response. Okay. I would consider that to be the fourth opportunity to object to being recorded. I note that you do not have a support person present. If they don't, are you happy to continue without one? Yeah, I'm fine. Or I note that your support person is John Citizen. John, do you understand your role as a support person? I then make mention of the fact if they want to take a break, let me know. Generally what I do is in an interview, I break at the hour mark. I then break probably at the next, say 40-minute mark, the 30-minute mark, and we reduce. If I see a person being upset, we'll take a break. If the person asks for a break, we'll take a break. If the support person says, oh, I think we need to take a break, we'll take a break. If I think the person, if I'm getting the impression the person needs some time to think about it, or I ask them a question and they're rifling through pages of notes, I'll say, well, how about we take a break for a few minutes so you can, get your notes organised. There's no hard and fast rule about taking a break. I did a 2.5 hour interview with a guy recently, and we didn't take a break because he just yabbered on. So I just let him go. There just didn't seem like a need to take a break. He was quite comfortable. By the end of it, I needed to take a break, but anyway. And finally, you don't have to answer any of my questions unless you choose to do so, but letting them know that if they don't answer any of my questions, my report may not be able to represent their account of the events. Do you understand that? Yes, I do. So that's my preamble. That's my warm-up. That's what I'm doing to kick things off. And then we get into what's called the account phase of the interview. What happened? And all the questions from the complaint analysis using what I call the puke method. This isn't mine. This was devised by an English psychologist by the name of Becky Milne, who did some work with police forces in England when they were getting their interviews turned over in court. So they looked at a different way of interviewing. So, puke. Oh, so anyway, looking back here, obviously I've just put up a slide from the complaint. So, the first question I'm going to be opening is an open question. Tell me about why you decided to make this complaint. And I want to know more about bullied, harassed, more about all those sort of things that are covered there. Okay, so puke, pure, uninterrupted. That's the most important part. Knowledge, exchange. Let them talk. Listen. Don't interrupt. Take notes. Now, you may have to direct the person back onto topic. You might have to ask questions to clarify if there's a natural break, but let them talk. I've had complainants talk for an hour, and just talk, and I just sit there writing notes. I like the analogy of puke in that, would you stick your face in front of someone who's puking and saying, are you okay? No, you'd wait. You'd wait till they finish puking and then say, are you okay? So it's a good method. I will caution that puke only works with recorded interviews. Very hard for someone to talk for an hour and for you to take written notes for an hour. So yeah, it's really good with recorded interviews, not so good if you're not recording. So in the account phase, be structured around your key topics. Start with broad open questions. So tell me, Sid, what brought you to make this complaint? Narrow down specific details of events, obtain specifics and examples. Names of witnesses are really important. So if Sid says, oh, there was a number of other staff around, which he does say in his complaint, you want to know who they were. Any supporting evidence? Does he have any documentation, emails, anything like that? Checking and confirming information throughout. So you've let them do the puke, and then you've got all your notes. And what I do is, if they say something that I want to come back to, I asterisk it, or maybe put a number beside, number 1, and then I'll come back and check that. So do it in chronological order for for complainants and witnesses. For respondents, what I do is when they've done their puke or they've answered questions, I'll generally jump around in non-chronological order to see if their responses change when they're not sort of having their ordered thoughts. Address or any questions, contradictions, rephrase questions. So if they're not answering the question, there's no point banging the drum and constantly asking the same question. Rephrase it. Ask a different way. Ask them for more information about that. Can you tell me more? I did say on one interview where I was actually stumped. I said, can you unpack that for me? And when I said, I thought, wow, that sounded really dumb. Anyway, they did. They told me more. So yeah, it's whatever language you decide to use. So audio recording, frequently asked questions. Can I audio or video record an interview? Yes, but you must advise all the parties if they make no objection, you can record. And as I said, be aware of your relevant jurisdiction. What if the interviewee says no or objects? In that case, you should not record. Can I record the interview without the other person knowing? In New South Wales, absolutely not. You'd be in breach of the Surveillance Devices Act. And I recommend you check the law in your jurisdiction. There are exemptions to that. One of them is to protect your rights or to protect yourself, but I don't think a workplace investigation falls under that. I did use a recording where a person recorded without the other person's knowledge. And that was a complainant who recorded herself being sexually harassed for about half an hour by a guy. And it never went to court because the fellow got sacked and he didn't appeal or anything. Had it gone to court and that evidence was argued against, I would have argued, or I would have had the lawyer argue that she was recording to protect herself. And you know, it was basically half an hour of him trying to convince her to have sex with him. So under the circumstances, it was only audio, even though it was on the phone, the camera was facing at the floor. But anyway, so check the law in your location. What's the best way to record an interview? Oh, there's lots of different ways. Personally, I use the iPhone, the voice memo function. Apps can be downloaded for Android phones. I know some people still use the old digital recorders. I'm not a fan. I think the iPhone does a very good job. Mine's now an iPhone 7. Because I'm not the sort of person who needs to update their phone every 5 minutes. I've had, I think, 2 or 3 6s, I had 5s, I've had 4s, and the iPhone recorder has never let me down, except for operator error on a couple of occasions. I find that I can upload straight to Dropbox to my transcriber. So I use that. And I actually have 2, one that I use for recording interviews, and the other one is my phone. And generally what I do is I delete the recordings off the phone pretty much as soon as I've uploaded them. I do retain the recordings just in case it's asked for. So yeah, it really comes down to letting them know that you're going to record and making sure that they're okay with it. Role of the support person. So like I said, I always invite people to have a support person present. Now, what the Fair Work Act says is any unreasonable refusal by an employer to allow a person to have a support person present to assist or discuss discussions relating to dismissal can be considered criteria for determining that dismissal was harsh, unjust, or unfair. Now, you might not know at the time when you're interviewing a respondent that it could result in dismissal, but I guess you've got to always assume that there's a potential for dismissal. So always for a respondent, but my general course of action is offer a support person for everyone. Sometimes complainants bring them, occasionally witnesses bring them, not always respondents. Respondents are more likely to bring a support person. And so the role is to provide emotional support to the interviewee, ensure that the process is fair, assist with communication. And sometimes if the person you're interviewing, be they a complainant or witness or respondent, has difficulty in communicating or difficulty with the language, a support person can be very helpful. Types of support person, generally Three types of support people, or there's colleagues, and colleagues is one. Lawyers or union reps is a second one, and family members is the third. My preference is union reps and lawyers, mostly because they know what their role is. They don't usually cause me any problems. I did an interview with a union rep as a support person, and we virtually co-interviewed because the person we're interviewing had very, very poor English language skills. He knew the union person, and the union person was able to rephrase questions and stuff like that. If you have to have an interpreter, obviously you have to have an interpreter. So yeah, lawyers, they're usually pretty good. Family members can be problematic, especially in sexual harassment matters if they're not sort of ready to hear what's being said. Colleagues, again, they can usually be pretty good. A support person can ask questions of the interviewer regarding the process, but they should not answer questions in front of on behalf of the interviewee. I do allow support people some latitude, especially family members. I'll say, look, you guys have probably discussed this at length. So if your friend or your husband, wife, whatever it might be, is forgetting something, give them a nudge. Say, hey, don't forget to tell him about something, because sometimes during the interview process, it can be quite nerve-wracking. People can forget things. So yeah, I don't have a problem with that. So long as they don't overstep the line and start answering for them. Now, if you get a disruptive support person, you've got a number of options. One, you can stop the interview and then say to the person, look, you can say, look, this is your role as a support person. Let me remind you, and you can't do what you're doing. You can stop the interview altogether and suggest we're going to reconvene at a different time and potentially offer suggest a different support person. You can eject the support person. I'm not a big fan of that. So it's really a matter of sort of keeping control of the situation. The worst support person I ever had was a sergeant from the Federal Police who was supporting his wife who was making a complaint. And I really had to take him aside and say, listen, guy, this is not a police interview. You've got no jurisdiction here. And if you keep behaving like this, I'm going to stop the interview. He got the message pretty clearly at that point. So yeah, you can't decide who the person's support person is, but you can decide who they are not. They can't be children. They can't be someone involved in the investigation in any way, shape or form. They can't be anyone who apparently doesn't have the capacity to be involved in the interview. So, but you can't say to the person, you've got to have this support person, okay? So as I've said, you can't plan every question, as you don't know what the complainant is going to say. So you've got to probe. Listen to understand, not to reply. Start with open questions, followed by closed questions. So let's have a look at some questions. Types of questions, okay. All right, open questions. These encourage free recall. So these are questions I'm asking of the respondent. Sarah's alleged you swore at her during the meeting on the 10th. Can you tell me, would you care to comment on that? Can you tell me what happened in the meeting on the 10th? So that could be for Sarah. Or the second one, I'd like to ask you about the meeting on the 10th. Can you tell me what happened? So just like in the interview script for Sid, tell me what brought you to make your complaint. You've got the open question. Now, an open question, again, it encourages the puke. So tell me what happened in the meeting. Tell me why you made this complaint. Tell me about your relationship with Graham. Tell me, open question, let them talk. Now, you might get a lot of talk, you might get very little talk. So this is a question, say, for the respondent. Did you swear at Sarah during the meeting on the 10th? Closed question. You're going to get a yes or no answer, which you get a no, you'll go back to your open question. Well, tell me what happened in the meeting, okay? Did Graham swear at you during the meeting on the 10th? Yes, he did. Okay, tell me about what happened. So you've gone from the open question, where you didn't really get that much, direct closed question, yes, he swore at me, back to an open question, tell me more about that. Okay, a leading question. This is for the respondent. You swore at Sarah in the meeting on the 10th, didn't you? That predisposes that you know that he did swear at Sarah, and that would be classified as inadmissible if it went to court. Okay, it sounds like you're biased. It sounds like you formed an opinion. It sounds like that you are asking this question wanting the answer of yes, I did. Suggestive questions. It sounds like you're telling me that you swore at Sarah during the meeting on the 10th. Now, this can be for a complainant. It sounds like you're telling me that this happened. Let them tell you. Don't tell them what you think they're telling you. Find out what they are telling you. That suggests that you've already made an opinion and you are directing them towards somewhere. So it's what we call a suggestive question. Were you at the meeting on the 10th? Was Sarah there? Did you swear at Sarah? Reversed, if it's were you at the meeting on the 10th? Was Graham there? Did Graham yell at you? That's 3 questions, and break it up into 3 questions if you have to. Were you at the meeting on the 10th? Yes, I was. Was Graham there? Yes, he was. Did Graham yell at you? Yes, he did. So then you're going to go back to an open question. Okay, so tell me what happened. And sometimes even with complainants, it is a little bit like pulling teeth at times. So you've got to work at it to get your answers. So, and that's where you go from closed to open, open to close. Repetitive questions. Can you tell me what you said to Sarah on the 10th? So again, you can get away with repetitive questions, but if you keep on asking the same question, then you will get some pushback from the interviewee. This often happens when an interviewer has planned out all of their questions. And in question, say 4, the complainant has actually answered question 5 and 6, yet you go ahead and you ask question 5 and 6. And the person says, but I already just told you that. Now, if they don't say it, they're thinking it. And they're starting to think, you know, I don't think this person knows what they're doing. I think this person's just going to read off this script and that's it. So they may lose confidence in you. The problem with that can occur if you don't find in favour of the complainant, you don't find evidence to support the complaint, they're going to come back and say, well, the guy didn't know what he was doing. He was asking me questions after question that I already answered. So it can come back to bite you. So again, listen. Negative questions. Shouldn't you have treated Sarah with more respect? Okay. It can be, you know, for a complainant question, shouldn't you have listened to Graham more? Now that sounds really like you don't believe their story. Again, can go back to bite you. Statements and opinions. I think you did swear at Sarah. You should tell me the truth. You know, Sid, I'm not really sure that you've understood what was happening. I think you should tell me the truth here. That's going to get you probably a walkout. Certainly, the interviewee is going to shut down. Your opinion is after your careful analysis of all the evidence, when you're giving your expert deliberation and opinion on whether the allegation is found or not. That's when your opinion's worthwhile. During the interview, keep your opinions to yourself, is my advice. Good interviewer use an open combination of open and closed, reframe where necessary, lead with open, clarify with closed. So it's really important that you ensure that your questioning is fair, that it is admissible in court if the matter winds up in court. Closing the interview, important to maintain the rapport. Check any information before closing. Now, as I said last week, one of my last questions is is there anything else you'd like to tell me about any of the matters we've discussed? And if they say yes, let them go. And if they tell you more, you're going to have to ask that question again at the end. If they decide to say, no, I think we've covered everything, then great, you've covered everything. Confidentiality statements that I discuss at the end. State the time of closing if recording. So that kind of closes the recording. Time concluded is whatever, 3 p.m. Inform what you're going to do next. I'm going to send you the transcript. As soon as I get it back from the transcribers, you'll get the transcript. Don't need to do anything with it. I'll be interviewing more people and thank them for participating if you want to. So thanks for your time. And that's the end. Some tips: remain calm. Now, one thing I do in my rapport building session is I let them know that my findings are based only on the evidence. I don't make any judgment on people's personalities or what I think of people or anything like that. Don't engage in arguments. Don't get in arguments with your interviewee. And sometimes they will try to do that. Now, if you saw my preamble goes for about a page and a half. And then we get into, tell me about what happened. I did an investigation a few months ago where my first question was on page 18, because everything before page 18 was the interviewee, the complainant, the respondent, arguing with me. And he was arguing about everything. This isn't fair. And he'd say things like, don't you agree? And I would say, no, I don't. This isn't fair. I shouldn't have been. Do you agree? No, I don't. But this isn't procedurally fair. Don't you agree? No, I don't. Procedural fairness dictates you can do this, this, and this. And we argued and I just basically answered his questions. Sometimes when he made statements, I said nothing and just sat there and looked at him. He was obviously mentally imbalanced. The organisation had actually said, under the circumstances, we probably, without preempting any findings, but even if you find against him, we'll probably look at, a warning or something. After reviewing my transcript, they started speaking to their lawyers. The guy was just argumentative all the way through the interview. But like I said, you remain calm, don't rise up, don't enter into arguments with them. You're there just to conduct the interview. Stay away from supportive comments when recording. Oh, yes, I understand that. Oh, no doubt that. Yes, I agree. That can form, and in the case of Loth versus Arthur, that can form the apprehension of bias, that you are biased. So when you're not recording, you can say whatever you want. But when you are recording, nodding is good. I say okay a lot. Okay, let's move on. Okay, I want to ask you something else. But stay away from supportive comments. Don't put your own interpretation on a statement. Get clarity from them. So anything that requires clarity, get it from them. Like I said last week, my manager, every time my manager walks out of the office, he glares at me. I know what glares means. I've got my interpretation of glare. I want to know what she meant, or in the case Sid, what did you mean when you said glare? Tell me describe the look on their face to me. Oh, I haven't seen it, but I can feel it. Get clarity. Remain and appear unbiased. I like to think that everyone who walks out of the interview thinks that, one, I have treated them with respect, I've treated them fairly, and I believe them. Now, they'll all be right about fairness and respect. 50% will be wrong about belief, because obviously I'm going to find one way or the other. I got an email from a lady recently who said, and I had interviewed her on a number of pretty serious bullying complaints, and she emailed me. She said, "Look, I just want to thank you for your interview the other day or the other week. You were very kind and you were very fair, and I just want to thank you. P.S. They sacked me yesterday." So look, I found against her. They terminated her, but at least she could come back and say, "Hey, you listened to me. You were fair," and obviously she decided that the finding was reasonable under the circumstances. Most people in those situations know what they've done. Some will try and weasel their way out of it. She pretty well admitted quite a bit. So always appear to be unbiased. I don't appear to be everybody's super friend, but I keep a professional manner. I always wear a suit, and as I say, right from the start, I let them know that what I'm here for, who I am. Some people look me up. I've had people have my LinkedIn profile sitting on the desk and they say, "I've looked you up," and I do feel like saying, "Congratulations, you can use Google." But I say, okay, fair enough, that's good. It doesn't matter to me. So yeah, that's the most important thing, is just, to give everybody a fair hearing, to be professional. Okay, so that's the end of today. If anyone wants to ask any questions, I will switch off the recording in a minute and I'll be open to questions. So I'll actually switch off the recording now, if I can figure out how to do that.